Bills, Broncos, playoffs. There is no tomorrow. We're going to get you ready for it today on the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into this crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Bills and Locked On Broncos. We are proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're thankful for our everydayers, those of you who make us your first listen and never miss a single episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. I'm Joe Marino, host of Locked On Bills, joined by Sayre Bedinger, the host of Locked On Broncos. We're here to get you ready for the super wild card round matchup between the Bills and Broncos in Orchard Park Sunday afternoon. We'll give you the path to victory for both sides. We'll talk Bills storylines, but I want to start with the Broncos storyline. Sayre, let's get right into it. I'm sure Broncos Country is excited. Denver breaks its 9-year playoff drought. Now, listen, I know about a 17-year playoff drought, so not quite the same, but 9 years. Welcome back to the postseason. Denver's got an A-list head coach. They've got a great defense. They got a bright rookie quarterback in Bo Nix. I want to start with Nix. How would you sum up his rookie campaign? Where has he impressed? And where are the biggest areas that you're looking for when it comes to growth?
I think to sum up his rookie campaign, Joe, I'd have to say just awesome. I mean, Bo Nix has been more than anything that anybody really expected going into the season. I think maybe some Oregon Ducks fans, maybe some people who loved him at Auburn thought, oh, yeah, he's going to light it up at the NFL level. But not many people that I talked to thought he was going to light it up at the NFL level. And he's surpassed all expectations. The most impressive aspect of it has just been poise. I mean, you see the growth from those first two games where, man, it was so easy for people to kind of start making jokes about, Sean Payton got this one wrong with Bo Nix. Obviously, he can't hang at the NFL level. 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions in the first two games. The offense, obviously struggling a lot, but the poise and the growth that he showed in terms of his ability to operate the offense, to spread the ball around to different receivers, to hit throws at every level, using his legs to make plays on the ground. I think there's no question that he's been in that offensive rookie of the year conversation all year long after those first two games, right? I mean, he turned it on week 3 in Tampa Bay, maybe the most unlikely of places to do it based on that time of year. That's one of the last places you really want to be playing and have to come out of an 0-2 hole against a good offense. But Bo Nix led this team all year long, and this entire Broncos roster has really responded well to him.
Yeah, obviously very impressive. And it's hard to quickly change narratives, right? Everyone wants to have the hot take right away, define everyone's career immediately, but players improve. I think both sides of these fan bases have enjoyed a lot of good player development for their teams. And Bo Nix, yeah, like you mentioned, a couple of rough starts to begin, but that didn't define his rookie season. Obviously, he got himself, right into that conversation with Jaden Daniels to be the rookie of the year. How about growth areas? I think you watch Bo Nix, you see, a playmaker, right? An instinctive guy. I think the offense is well suited for him. I think there's a good mix of, hey, screens and let's get the ball out, let's move the pocket, but then also plenty of, hey, go make plays, and he does. And so there's a lot of good with Bo Nix. Where are you looking for the growth when it comes to him?
Well, I think moving past this season, it's really going to be working on, can we get the timing down on some of these deep shots? I mean, ironically, the one guy he's had trouble connecting with this year has been Troy Franklin, his old Oregon teammate. And we've seen a number of mistimed deep balls between those guys. But over the course of the year, I mean, there's been some fantastic ones like we saw this past weekend or a couple of weeks against Cincinnati. And even before that against Cleveland, the Marvin Mims play. So we've seen some big time hits. Can those be more consistent throughout the course of the year? I think there's times where Bo likes to kind of jump out of the pocket before stepping up into it, because the Broncos pass protection has been awesome this season. And so to step up into a clean pocket, to trust your O-line and to hit some of these passing concepts that Sean Payton has drawn up. Now, has he done bad at that all year? Absolutely not. But there are times when you watch back and you're like, man, he maybe left a little meat on the bone here or a little meat on the bone there. And nobody's going to be more critical than him, which has been nice to hear after games. He's come out and said, I should have hit these 2 plays to Franklin, or I should have hit this pass play that I threw an interception, or things like that. So accountability's been there, but there are areas for sure that he can grow.
Yeah, sounds like just reps, right? And obviously a great opportunity to finish his rookie season and be in the playoffs. I mean, no better way to get game experience than games like this. So it'd be a great opportunity for him. How about this Denver offense? It's gotten better. First 10 games of the season, they averaged 19.7 points per game. The last 7, 32.6. That's a healthy sample size. I know people want to poo-poo at it because they didn't play all the greatest defenses in the world. I got news. Bills defense isn't that good either. What did you see here? Is it a quarterback that's grown throughout the course of the season? What's factoring into how this offense has just become so much more productive here in the second half of the year?
Well, I think it does start with Bo Nix. I mean, like you mentioned earlier, kind of just out there making plays and running the offense. It's been, I know we say that and it's like, well, what does that even mean? Well, a lot of times folks want to look at the passing chart for Bo Nix that gets put out every week from Next Gen Stats or whatever and be like, oh yeah, look at all these passes near the line of scrimmage. The reason why that's happening is because the Broncos haven't run the ball very well this year. And so they're utilizing the short passing game as kind of an extension of that running game to try to get something going after the catch. We saw that again when they played the Chargers, Jesse Minter's defense. They got an 11-point lead early in that game, largely because they had their best game of the year in terms of getting yards after the catch. Not Jesse Minter's like, hey, you're not going to throw the ball deep on us. We've seen you do that a handful of times this season. So you're going to have to get everything in front. And that's exactly what they did. So the adjustments there throughout the course of the season, whatever teams have been throwing at this offense, they seem to have been able to counter, which is something that you kind of would expect with Sean Payton. But the consistency of the scoring, I mean, I didn't know the stat that you just brought up until you sent it to me. But when we were talking about this show beforehand, that's pretty amazing. I mean, considering where they were the first 2 games and then that Jets game where I think 10-9 final score, that was week 4, week 5, something like that. So to go from where they were at the beginning of the year to finishing with a top 10 overall scoring offense, it's pretty crazy.
Sayre, let's go on a Vance Joseph journey, and I hope that you can help me here. And I know that Denver fans have been through an absolute journey with Vance Joseph, former head coach, now defensive coordinator, which that's just got to be a little bit weird. But obviously it's working because this defense is really, really good. So Vance Joseph, I followed his career for a long time, obviously spending time in the AFC East with Miami, and then he just keeps getting opportunities. But what I would say is that, like, metrically, his defenses haven't been good until this year. And I'm like, oh, that's what everybody's seeing in Vance Joseph. He's really maximized what he has on this defensive roster. So what's going on here? What's up with this defense? How has Vance Joseph really gotten everything out of it? And then just maybe you can apply that to this matchup on Sunday against Josh Allen and company.
It's really been the pass rush, everything feeding off the pass rush. Plus, you've got a pretty good player out there in Pat Surtain at the cornerback position that makes life easier on your pass rush as well. Just to know that, man, we can send extra. And Vance Joseph blitzed more than most defensive coordinators this year. So I think that's been his calling card this year, is having a front 4 that can get home easily, pretty consistently, with Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito, Zach Allen, and then whoever's out there between John Franklin Myers, Malcolm Roach, DJ Jones. Those guys are able to get home with 4, but then the way that they're able to get after the quarterback with 5, 6 guys, sending defensive backs on blitzes, sending Cody Barton, Justin Sternad from up the A gap. They've done so much of that throughout the course of the year. And I think that's the biggest issue they've given opposing offenses, and maybe for the Bills this year, in this game in particular, is to say, okay, our blitz package, you've seen it on tape. It's all out there. Vance Joseph acknowledged that a couple weeks ago. All of our tape is out there, warts and all. So now what do you do with that when we put Justin Sternad, Cody Barton in the A gap, and then we drop all but 3 guys? What do you do with that, and how do you adjust? That's been a huge advantage for him this year, is just confusing the opposing quarterbacks as much as possible, although it hasn't always worked out. Little feast or famine at times.
Let me sneak one more in here about the Denver defense. It's been great. The dominant defense this year. There's been some letdown games, including a recent stretch later in the season. When it's not clicking, What is at the root of that? And like, what concerns do you have going up against Buffalo on Sunday with Denver's defense?
There were two primary reasons for the letdowns late in the season defensively. The first one being the injury to Riley Moss, which caused the Levi Wallace game against Cleveland, where
Levi Wallace,
y'all know Levi Wallace, so giving up almost 500 yards to Jameis Winston, that caused the Broncos to throw Chris Abrams-Drain in the mix. And then against the Chargers, they just had so many lapses in coverage. Sean Payton saying 5 or 6 free runners at times against Justin Herbert, who's going to feast on that kind of stuff. So you had lapses in coverage, communication between the safeties and linebackers. You had the Riley Moss injury. And I think all of those things contributed. Plus, you go up against the buzzsaw that is Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. Those guys are going to get theirs and have theirs on any given weekend in the NFL season. So that's been the tough part down the stretch this season. And then the big play has occasionally burned the Broncos, as we saw against, the Colts almost got off to a 27 lead in that game. The big play has been a bit of an Achilles heel at times for the Broncos this year too.
All right, that's the big stuff with Denver. We're talking Bills on the other side of it, folks. Be sure to stick with us. I love going to events, whether it's sports, music, comedy, theater. And one of my favorite memories this past year was attending a concert. The energy, the excitement, it was unforgettable. Now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was actually looking for some tickets to an upcoming concert using Game Time. And with Game Time Picks, I found an amazing deal, and I could even see a view from my seat before purchasing. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices, plus the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Joe Marino, Locked On Bills, Sayre Bedinger, Locked On Broncos. We talked Broncos in the first segment. It's time to talk Bills. Sayre, what do you want to get into?
Joe, I've been watching a lot of this Bills team this year, of course, selfishly, a bit of a fantasy interest with James Cook leading me to the championship. Shout out to him. Big time stuff. Love to see it. But the biggest difference, I think, from the last time that you and I chatted about Bills Broncos last year, the Bills are one of those teams, and they're the fewest giveaways in the entire NFL this year, which is a bit abnormal, I think, for Josh Allen and what he's, obviously the guy makes plays, the guy's put up numbers, plenty of numbers, but I think just along with that come the interceptions and the fumbles, things like that. And we saw that in abundance the last time these two teams played. So to me, my biggest question for you is what's been the biggest difference this year as opposed to years past, where Josh has taken so much better care of the football and the offense in general has really limited turnovers better than anybody else in the league?
Yeah, I think Joe Brady deserves a lot of credit for this, taking over after that Denver game last year that featured quite a few blunders. James Cook fumbled on the first snap of the game. Gabe Davis with a drop pass that went right into Justin Simmons' hands. Deontay Hardy runs a bad route, and Josh throws a pick. That was a game that was emblematic of a lot of the issues that plagued the Bills offensively for a while, and Joe Brady's infusion on this scheme has really helped. But I'll really get specific here. And Stephon Diggs gave the Buffalo Bills the greatest 4-year stretch of receiver production the organization's ever seen. The Bills are a better team, and they're a better offense because they don't have them. And what it really comes down to is Josh Allen has freedom to operate. It's no longer worrying about 14 and how many targets he's going to get and if he's happy and how he's reacting to everything. Josh Allen has the freedom to go out there and just run the offense, read the defense, go to the smart right place with the football. And that's been huge. And I'll double down. It's not just the departure of Stephon Diggs that has made this offense better. It's also Gabe Davis. There's been an absolute lie out there that people believe that Gabe Davis is a legitimate number 2 receiver in the NFL. And the Bills tried to validate that for 3 years. And it's just not who he is. He's not a volume guy. He doesn't separate quickly. He doesn't give you yards after a catch. He's a guy that has size and ball skills down the field that you can launch it to. That's not a volume receiver, Sayre. And I think those guys being gone and leaning into this everybody eats mentality where no disrespect to Patrick Surtain. He's the best corner in the NFL. He's somewhat minimized in a game like this because the Bills don't have a number one receiver. Who are you going to take away? It doesn't matter, right? And I think that's what it comes down to is this offense isn't about any one player that's not Josh Allen. He has freedom to operate. They're versatile with their skill sets, and Joe Brady has really organized this in a way that allows Josh Allen to just go out there and execute, not worry about making sure that Gabe Davis is validated as a number two or making sure that Stephon Diggs gets his production and Josh Allen can just do the smart right thing with the football.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I've enjoyed watching that aspect of Josh Allen's game and the evolution of that. And to continue to give Joe Brady some of his flowers here, I think specifically leaning into this James Cook storyline, as he's had just an incredible season for the Bills. Statistically speaking, very similar numbers to what we saw last year, other than the huge spike in overall touchdowns. So I don't know. I kind of teeter between, like, do you go back and look at some of the stuff that we saw from, Joe Brady when he was at LSU, Joe Burrow spreading the ball around to everybody eats mentality. What's been the source of the huge spike in terms of the usage of James Cook when it comes to punching the ball in and scoring the football more this year than last year, obviously?
Man, imagine Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase on the same receiver core, man. That was Joe Burrow throwing him the ball in college. In college, come on. Yeah, that's why 2019 LSU is the best college football team I've ever seen. James Cook, man, he's had a great season. And what I think it really comes down to, like you said, the production's similar. In fact, the volume stats were better last year. The touchdown production's off the charts. If Jahmyr Gibbs didn't go out and have 3 touchdowns in that last game, James Cook scored the most touchdowns in the NFL this season. And I think the reason for that is James Cook got better. And that's what it really comes down to. Cook had a good season last year, a lot of opportunity, a lot of volume. But I thought there was 3 areas in particular where he struggled. First of all, short yardage and contact balance. And let's face it, he's never going to be a grinder. He's never going to be, that type of Terrell Davis after contact, right? Travis Henry, there's a mutual Bills Broncos running. He's not that, right? He's 5'11", 195 pounds. That's not what he's going to be. But he's been better after contact because I think his vision has really, really improved. And his ability to set up tacklers and use his lateral quickness. He's been really, I think he put on a little bit of weight in terms of muscle, and that's helped him a lot through contact. That's made him a much better short yardage option. And I think his time on task has led to better decisions with the football. He sees it a lot better. Number 2 is he's really cleaned up the fumbles. Fumbles were an issue for him last year. You saw that in the Denver game. He fumbled on the first play. He got benched, actually came back and had a really good game. He fumbled again and got it back. But the Bills had 192 rushing yards in that meeting last year against Denver, as they were kind of up and down with their run defense at times last season. The Bills kind of got the better of that. And that was through James Cook kind of being benched for a decent part of that game, but also drops. He dropped a bunch of passes last year, and that's cleaned up as well. And so I think that's led to a more confident player that goes out, and he's been able to hit a lot of home runs. He's been able to win in short yardage. And while he's the lead back, it's also a shared backfield with Ty Johnson and Ray Davis. And I think they all work together. They maximize their opportunities, and the Bills have been pretty good running the football this year.
They absolutely have. And it's been fun to watch those guys emerge as well. Defensively for this Buffalo Bills team, this will be my last question for you, Joe, and I'll let you kind of vamp on this as you will. I know that the Broncos have struggled this year against the best teams that they've faced off against when it comes to, teams with winning records, things like that. It's been a big storyline. I look at the Buffalo Bills this year. 28 points in the first game of the year against Kyler Murray, 35 versus Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, 23 against Houston and CJ Stroud, obviously. Then you go down the line, the Rams and Matt Stafford, 44 points allowed, 42 the next week to the Detroit Lions. And obviously they faced off against some great teams this year, some great quarterbacks. So going through this gauntlet of the AFC, I think everybody's expectation is going to be the Bills. They should be getting to the AFC Championship game at worst. Defensively, are you confident in that? What is this team's week-to-week calling card, and how does that, again, like you said earlier, how does that apply, do you think, to this game against Denver?
Very, very, very concerned about the defense, Sayre. And you pointed out a lot of the games this year that, they gave up a high amount of points. They've been terrible on third downs this season. Situationally, they've not played well. I think their pass rush has been very, very disappointing. So yeah, that's all a major concern, and it's been the concern. The Bills have been a great football team for a number of years. They're the only team that's not named the Chiefs that have won at least one playoff game each of the last 4 seasons. Their win percentage really since 2020 has been, like, when you talk about sports in general, like, I think they're number 2 in terms of win percentage. It's been a very, very good football team. But the reason that they haven't gotten over the hump when it comes to going to the Super Bowl, or, you know, they went to the AFC Championship game once and lost to the Chiefs, has been defense. It just has not been good enough, even when they've been metrically great in the regular season. That playoff elimination game, like 3 times against Mahomes, once against Joe Burrow, the defense has been terrible. And this year, their regular season defense is probably worse than it's ever been. And so, yeah, am I concerned about it in the playoffs? Absolutely. This defensive line is average at best. They got a couple of good players. Greg Rousseau's a stud. Ed Oliver can be a stud. He's kind of very inconsistent. Von Miller has his moments, but there's not dudes out there that are going to go out there and win one-on-one battles like you see in Denver with guys like Nick Bonito, with guys like Jonathan Cooper, and John Franklin Myers and Zach Allen. The Bills don't have a deep group of guys like that. And they like to win with organic rush. They don't blitz very often. They don't stunt. They rely on this organic rush, and it just has not been good enough. And yeah, I'm concerned that it won't be good enough in the postseason. Their third down defense has fallen apart lately, and partly because they just don't have a very effective pass rush, and sometimes they can be a little loose in coverage and give up conversions. So this story of the Buffalo Bills defense team this year, how far they go, is relying on this defense. Josh Allen's going to be great. Josh Allen's been great in the postseason every year. I mean, he's arguably been the best postseason quarterback in NFL history. Most yards, most touchdowns per game amongst quarterbacks that have had 10 starts or more in the postseason. This isn't a Josh Allen thing. He's been unbelievable. His defense has let him down. And the concern is, well, when's that going to be this year? Is it Denver? Are they going to play Baltimore next week? Is it the AFC Championship game? Like, at what point is the defense going to, not be able to pull its weight? And I'm concerned about that in a big way. Is it this week against Denver? That's been the good thing, is they've kind of had a good wild card game. Then when they get up against, Mahomes or Burrow, it falls apart. So that's going to be the story of this Bills run. How good can this defense can be? And quite frankly, it's been the worst it's been during the regular season. And that doesn't give me a lot of confidence that it's not going to get in the way of another postseason run. All right, folks, we're going to get into the path to victory for both sides of the equation here in just a moment. Be sure to stick with us. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. And the FanDuel app gives you everything you need to place live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a win. I love betting on which players are going to hit the over on their stat projections, if a team's going to cover the spread. Building parlays, it is thrilling. You can get in on all the playoff action. If you like Denver to cover, you want to go over on the point total. Might have been a little low, in my opinion. You can check all that out over at FanDuel. And not only can you bet on who's going to win the game, but FanDuel has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills, joined by Sayre Bedinger of Locked On Broncos, here to get you ready for Bills Broncos Super Wild Card Weekend. And of course, this episode is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app, use code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Sayre, it's time for path to victory here. And I just talked about a lot of concerns for the Bills on the defensive side of the football. All that being said, the Bills are favorites in this game. If you go to our friends over at FanDuel, they have the Bills as an 8.5-point favorite. For Denver to come into Buffalo and really ruin the season for the Buffalo Bills, and then you get a chance to go play the Chiefs if they win. That's the guaranteed thing. You get that date. We all remember that 14-16 blocked field goal situation. Now, if we don't really week 18, that didn't mean anything. But what's it going to take to get that third matchup against Kansas City for Denver?
Well, I always think it's so easy to say, well, you got to win the turnover battle. You got to convert on third downs. You got to do this, that, and the other. So let's get super specific here. All right. So number one key to victory for the Denver Broncos is let Marvin Mims stay hot. Let Marvin Mims cook out there, baby. He's been the key for this offense since the trade deadline. Have to keep him involved. Have to continue getting him opportunities to create big plays for your offense, because he's the one guy that's been creating those big plays over the last 2 months. Number 2 key, you have to manage the game well. If you're Sean Payton, it can't be any situations where everybody is wondering, why did he not call a timeout here? Why did he not do this? Why was he throwing in this situation and not running in this situation? Why did we abandon the run in this situation? I mean, X, Y, Z. You can go back over the course of the season. Sean Payton has done a tremendous job, but at times, the game management, the flow of the game, there's been some questionable decisions there. And then number 3, I think you're going to need 2 interceptions in this game in order to win. Now, again, we talked about it before. Josh Allen, fewest interceptions we've seen of his career, lowest interception percent, fewest giveaways of any team in the NFL. If you're the Denver Broncos, you want to go on the road and upset the Buffalo Bills in the postseason, I think you're going to need 2 picks in this game, at least, in order to give your offense those extra possessions and turn the tide momentum-wise to get this win. So keep Marvin Mims hot, manage the game well if you're Sean Payton, and then number 3, get at least 2 interceptions. And I think then the Broncos could book their trip to Kansas City for the second round of the playoffs.
Man, I love Marvin Mims. It's been a journey. I loved him coming out of Oklahoma. I had a high grade on him, and then it's just felt like he's such an afterthought. And anytime he touched the ball, it's like, my goodness, this guy looks like he's an absolute monster. And we've seen that really kind of crank up. Good return guy, too, over 16 yards per punt return, over 27 yards per kick return for his career. He hasn't taken one to the house yet. I think there's only a matter of time there on the return stuff. Good player. I think he's the explosive guy. When I start thinking about Denver, Sutton's obviously the dude, right? They throw the ball to him a ton. But the one that I get nervous about is Mims.
He's a playmaker. All-pro, back-to-back all-pro. Crazy enough.
He's right. And just imagine if they get some more. He's a good route runner. He's got good hands. Yeah, it's only a matter of time before that guy becomes really, a household name on the receiving side of things. All right, for the Bills to avoid everything that you just talked about. And let me say this. If the Denver Broncos win this game, go beat the Chiefs. I mean, come on now. Go beat the Chiefs. We know Denver would want to do that. But the Bills, we're clinging to all we can here. The Bills have been to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row. The only team that's ever done that. Well, this would be 3 for the Chiefs. We need that to restart. So go Broncos if the Bills don't get that opportunity. My keys for Buffalo to beat Denver on Sunday afternoon. Number 1 is pass rush. Every playoff elimination game that I've watched with the Bills, and there's been more than I want to admit here over the last several years, their pass rush doesn't show up. They have 2 sacks in those 4 elimination games since 2020. And I don't have a lot of confidence. And so in the pass rush, how can Sean McDermott and Bobby Babich maximize what they have? Well, like you mentioned, Denver's pass blocking has been terrific all season long. Veteran offensive line, plus starter in bowls, maybe the best guard in the league in minors. McGlinchey, Powers is a nice free agent signing. Wattenberg's really emerged as a center there. I don't think the Bills can go into this game and just say, hey, our 4 versus your 5, let's go beat them and get to Bo Nix. I don't think that's going to work. They got to come up with the right pass rush plan, whether that is sim pressures, blitzing, stunts, all kinds of – you got to do whatever it takes here to affect Bo Nix, because you look at his metrics, they're great across the board. Like every quarterback, the metrics go down when they're pressured. You got to get pressure on this guy, and it's hard to do it with the way that this team protects and also how they schematically, I think, take advantage of some things with the screen game, with the play action game, moving the pocket. So they help their protection with scheme, and they have good players. So the Bills got to have the right rush plan here, and that's going to help all the third down woes that I talked about earlier. Number 2 is I think you have to have an all-of-the-above approach on offense. The way that this offense is built is everybody eats. You have a bunch of different guys that you can throw the football to. Tight ends, backs, receivers, inside, outside guys. Pat Surtain's going to take somebody off the menu. Okay, there's other players that you can go to. You're built for this. This isn't, okay, you're going to Kansas City. They got L'Jarius Sneed. He's taking away Stephon Diggs. You better figure it out. That doesn't matter in a game like this. You have to be able to go out there and take advantage of exactly the team that you've built, that they can't take away that one thing, because there's not one thing to take away. And I think whether that's short passes, the play action game, the screen game, the Bills have been opportunistic there. They have a very, very multiple run scheme. Josh Allen's involvement in the run game, he's like 32 yards away from becoming the all-time leader in playoff rushing yards for a quarterback. There's no tomorrow. This is the time where you empty it all out there and do what you're designed to do offensively against a great Denver defense. And then number 3 is you got to stay good in the red zone. Denver, unbelievable red zone defense. They only allow a touchdown 47% of the time, less than half the time. They're not giving up touchdowns. We watched Joe Burrow. I mean, those red zone possessions were unbelievable in that game. And Buffalo's been great in red zone offense. 72% they score. Josh Allen, probably the best red zone quarterback in the NFL. Can you stay good there where Denver's good? And I think there's a lot of matchups of like good on good. When you think about the Bills pass protection, they've been really good. Josh Allen, the least sacked quarterback in the NFL against obviously the team that not only from a raw volume perspective have the most sacks, but as a percentage of plays, 9% of the time they get a sack, highest pressure rate there. It's good on good in a lot of different areas in this game. But I think in the red zone, you got to score because you've seen this, man. When you watch football and that team's moving the ball, but they settle for threes don't add up like sevens. You got to get sevens instead of threes because that's going to keep the game close. If you can capitalize when you move the ball and stay good in the red zone, this hasn't been an issue, but you wonder in a game like this where Denver's been so good in the red zone, can you maintain that efficiency that you've shown all season long? You do those things, then you get a chance probably to host the Baltimore Ravens next week.
And those are the things that exactly have kept the Broncos in games against good teams. Like you mentioned, they're 8.5-point underdogs in this game, which I find interesting because they've only lost one game by more than one score this entire season. It was against the Baltimore Ravens. So going to be fascinating. I think it's got a chance to go either way, blowout or close game, one way or the other. Joe, I think there's some intangible storylines that are fascinating as well, like Josh Allen, the guy, the one who got away, John Elway's biggest mistake, his own self-proclaimed biggest mistake. Now the Broncos facing off against him in their final return to the playoffs after Super Bowl 50. And of course, speaking of Super Bowl 50, I can't not mention Von Miller. And I love the Instagram post that he put out there with the memes that he had, the Vic and Oz from the Penguin. It's just great stuff. How fitting that the Broncos returned to the playoffs for the first time in 9 years since Super Bowl 50. They would be going up against Von Miller, who might be in his swan song. I don't know. It could be. I mean, maybe he plays another year or two, but very interesting, intangible storylines here as well.
Yeah, the defensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers, Sean McDermott. So it's fun. The last time Denver was in the Super Bowl, we see them beat the Carolina Panthers in the Super Bowl. Shout out Cam Newton. Great job recovering that fumble. I'll never forget that. But Von Miller was Super Bowl MVP. I mean, that is crazy to think about this. Two teams that have had long droughts. Again, we'll win the Suck Olympics here. The Bills with 17 years without the playoffs there. But Denver, like a team that, I mean, I'm almost 40 years old. Denver's for like the first 30 years of my life, always good. Always good. Even like different iterations of the team, always good. So it's been really strange. I think you look at some of that ownership transition and you wonder how much that plays into it. But feels like they're on a great path, a great ownership, young quarterback, defense looks good. Sean Payton's obviously on a Hall of Fame path, Super Bowl winning coach. And so one thing we can agree on, no Chiefs. No more Chiefs. No more Chiefs.
Get them out.
Get them out of here.
Get them out of there.
All right, Sayre, this has been a lot of fun. Great conversation. Looking forward to the game. And, folks, there's plenty of more coverage coming your way, both on Locked On Broncos, Locked On Bills, before and after the game. Make sure you're paying attention to both podcasts. Check out Sayre and his work. Cody Roark and him do a great job over on Locked On Broncos. Enjoy the game, folks. As always, we kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to catching up with you again real soon.